Call your labourers who woke early. Call your labourers who came late. Call your labourers who feel wronged. Call your labourers who feel overlooked. Call your labourers who can't feed their children with this wage. Call your labourers who use their wage to increase your love. Call all your labourers, O God. Tell us to roll up our sleeves, for we know that we have work to do. Let us find you in the work we share, here and now. In Christ's presence we pray. Amen. Welcome to my reflection for Sunday the 20th of September 2020. Today I've returned to Pelsall, where I was born and brought up. The area that you see behind me is open space and green now, but back in the 19th century it would have been black by day and red by night. We're on the northern edge of the Black Country. This was the location for Pelsall Ironworks, established in 1832 by Richard Fryer, who utilised the local canal network to bring together coal, produced locally here in Pelsall, together with iron ore and limestone, both of which abounded locally. Fryer was a Wolverhampton MP and banker. Fryer died in 1846 and the ironworks changed hands, which brings us to today's theme of the benevolent employer. But first, let us pray. Jesus, you were a storyteller. You talked about money, wages and taxes. You told stories about integrity and forgiveness. You helped people who were in trouble. You listened to people who were sad. You call us to live as you did, to listen to each other, to be forgiving, and to love our neighbours as we love ourselves. Boaz Bloomer is about as Victorian a name as you can imagine, and he had an appearance to match. But he was born before the Victorian era in 1801 in Dudley, and in 1846, together with a business partner, he purchased the Pelsall Ironworks, which were on this site, from the estate of the late Richard Fryer. At its peak, the ironworks was immense. It included 2 blast furnaces, 40 puddling furnaces, and more about puddling furnaces in a moment, 7 mills and forges, a gasworks and a gasometer, and an extensive network of tramways and engine sheds. Again, at its peak, it employed several hundred people, and they were employed in manufacturing sheet and bar iron of the highest quality. It was exported from here in Pelsall to the USA, to India and China, and nails from here were exported separately to Canada, Norway and Sweden. When a pub was built nearby, it was named the Free Trade, to recognise that right from here in Pelsall, trade was being carried out across the world. Over the years, Boaz Bloomer acquired several local collieries too, and the business changed its name to the Pelsall Coal and Iron Works Company. Generations of my ancestors, Hollands and Coopers, were employed here in the ironworks, and many of them worked as puddlers. Now, puddling is the process that transforms brittle pig iron back through a molten state into strong, malleable, workable wrought iron. Puddling involves stirring the molten iron, a dangerous and unpleasant task that was the job of the puddler. The ironworks fell into disuse in the 1890s, long after Boaz Bloomer's death, and OS maps from 1884 and 1901 show the extent of the demolition. But even in the 1960s and 1970s, I remember as a child playing on the cracker, which was a great mountain of ironworks waste. Gradually that was taken away to be used in road building projects elsewhere. It really is a wild and tranquil place now, a haven for all sorts of wildlife, and it's hard to imagine that this was a noisy, smelly place that was the place of work, hard work, for so many hundreds of people. But as well as being an industrialist, Boaz Bloomer was a philanthropist. He allowed his Christian faith to influence the ways he carried out his business and how he cared for the welfare of his employees and their families. Boaz was a Methodist, and he donated the land and paid for the building of Pelsall Wesleyan Church and the adjacent school. And Pelsall Methodist Church still stands on part of that site. Here at the Ironworks, he established a reading room with newspapers and periodicals that his workforce could read for their betterment and to increase their knowledge. He also built a Tommy shop where employees could buy basic essentials for what was hopefully a reasonable price. And then there was education. As soon as he took over the ironworks in the 1840s, he contributed towards the education of the children of employees. And from 1868, he ensured that all children of all employees were getting a good education. Bloomer was one of many philanthropist industrialists who cared for the welfare of their workers. In today's Gospel reading, we hear of a benevolent employer. And for the Gospel today, I'm going to use a dramatic version filmed by Phil Summers, a Methodist minister in Gloucestershire. So enjoy the story of the benevolent employer.
The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire labourers for his vineyard. Having agreed with them the usual daily wage, he sent them into the vineyard. When he went out again about 9 o'clock in the morning, he saw others standing idly about in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You too should go and work in the vineyard, and I will pay you what is right." And so they went. When he went out at about noon, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he did the same. When he went out again at about 5 o'clock, he saw others standing around, and he said to them, "Why are you standing around here doing nothing all day?" And they said, "Well, because no one would hire us." And he said, "Well, you too, go to the vineyard." When evening came, the man who owned the vineyard spoke to his manager, saying, "Call the workers and give them their pay, starting with the last and working towards the first." When those who were hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. And when the first came, well, they thought they would receive more, but they received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they started to grumble against the landowner, saying, "These first ones, they only worked 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, and yet we worked through the entire day in the burning heat." And he said to one of them, "Friend, I've done you no wrong. You agreed on the usual daily wage. Now take your money and go. I choose to give this last one the same as I gave you. Am I not allowed to do what I want with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?" And so the last will be first, and the first will be last.
The vineyard is an image that's used frequently in the Old and New Testament to represent the kingdom of God. In the story that Jesus told, an employer goes out to hire labourers for the day ahead. The working day would have started at 6 o'clock. He hires some labourers and agrees with them the daily wage, which would be 1 denarii, enough to support the worker and their family for a day or so. 3 hours later, at 9 o'clock, he goes out and hires some more labourers. He does the same at 12 noon and at 3 o'clock. With them, he doesn't agree a wage. He simply says he will pay what is fair or what is right. Then, surprisingly, he goes out again into the marketplace and hires more labourers at 5 o'clock, just an hour before the end of the working day. They would barely have had time to raise a sweat before they were told to down tools and gather to be paid. They would have expected maybe an hour's pay, not enough to support them, let alone the rest of their family. But surprisingly, they receive a whole denarii, a whole day's pay. Those who'd worked longer were watching and were astonished by this. They would have expected more. But then those who'd worked 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, all received the same as those who had worked 12 hours and those who had worked 1 hour. A whole denarii. 1 day's pay. There was outrage. The employer, however, was seemingly thinking of the welfare and of the needs of the employees and their families. He was allowing his faith to influence the way he dealt with people and how he paid them. Jesus uses this as an image of God's provision for all of us. And in a moment we'll hear who he was addressing this parable to. But first, let us pray. To those without food, God is generous. To those without work, God is generous. To those away from home, God is generous. To those who ask for help, God is generous. Today, here and where we live, God wants to be generous through us. Jesus addresses the parable to some of those who are moaning and grumbling about his ministry, some of the Pharisees and some of the scribes. They have seen that Jesus is associating with tax collectors and sinners. More than that, he is saying that tax collectors and sinners have a place within the kingdom of God. And even more than that, he's saying that tax collectors and sinners may precede the scribes and Pharisees into that kingdom. The scribes and Pharisees have devoted their lives to studying the law and keeping God's law. They expect that they will have a place within the kingdom of God, and maybe even a priority place. But Jesus is saying, no, there are no priorities. Tax collectors and sinners will inherit the kingdom of God. In the parable, those who've worked an hour and those who worked all day receive the same reward, except that it isn't a reward. It's not based on the work that the labourers have done. It's rather based on the generosity of the employer. And that's the point of the parable. Jesus is saying God's acceptance, God's love is all-embracing, all-inclusive, and welcomes all. Yes, he says, the Pharisees and scribes are within the kingdom of God, but so too are these tax collectors and sinners. We cannot earn our place within God's kingdom. All we have to do is accept the love of God in Jesus Christ, and we are part of the kingdom of God. Let us pray. Go out from here as workers in God's upside-down kingdom, where the last are first and the first are last, where needs are met in miraculous ways, and there is grace enough for all. And may the blessing of God, the love of Jesus Christ, and the presence of the Holy Spirit surround us and sustain us in the coming days. Amen. Thank you as always for sharing in this reflection today. As always, there's a written version on the resource site, the address of which is now appearing on the screen. Next week we'll hear Jesus telling another parable, telling the scribes and Pharisees that all they have to do is to accept what God is offering. Take care, stay safe, and the best of all, God is with us.